The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble steps of First National Bank, as Marcus Thompson adjusted the Navy security uniform he'd borrowed from his company's Lost and Found. The polyester fabric felt rough against his skin, a stark contrast to the Italian wool suits that usually filled his closet. But today wasn't about comfort. Today was about truth.
Marcus had built Thompson Industries from the ground up, transforming a small community investment firm into a multi-billion-dollar empire that now owned banks, real estate, and tech companies across 3 states. 6 months ago, his lawyers had finalized the purchase of First National Bank, the very institution where his grandmother had been denied a loan 50 years earlier because of the color of her skin. The irony wasn't lost on him.
He'd planned to announce the acquisition quietly, but disturbing reports from his network had changed everything. Black customers being followed by security, loan applications mysteriously delayed, qualified applicants rejected for reasons that somehow never applied to their white counterparts. The stories painted a picture that made his stomach turn.
So Marcus had decided to see for himself, walking into his own bank as just another black man in a security uniform to witness how his employees really treated people who looked like him.
The glass door slid open with a soft whoosh, and Marcus stepped into the gleaming lobby. Crystal chandeliers hung from the vaulted ceiling, casting warm light across polished marble floors that reflected like mirrors. The scent of expensive leather and fresh flowers filled the air, creating an atmosphere of wealth and exclusivity.
Behind the mahogany reception desk sat a young blonde woman whose smile faltered the moment she spotted him. Her fingers paused over her keyboard as her eyes traveled from his worn boots to the plastic name tag that read Mike Johnson, the name of the security guard whose uniform he wore.
"Excuse me," she called out, her voice sharp enough to cut through the quiet conversations echoing around the lobby. "Are you lost?" Marcus kept his expression neutral, his hands clasped behind his back in the posture he'd seen security guards maintain. "Just starting my shift, ma'am."
The receptionist, whose nameplate identified her as Jessica, frowned and reached for her phone. "I wasn't told about any new security personnel. Let me call Mr. Davidson."
Within minutes, a tall man in an expensive suit strode across the lobby, his polished shoes clicking against the marble with military precision. Regional Manager Robert Davidson had the kind of face that belonged on corporate brochures: sharp jawline, perfectly styled hair, and eyes that sized up everyone he met in terms of their net worth.
"What's this about?" Davidson's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question.
"This man says he's security," Jessica replied, her tone suggesting she found the very idea absurd.
Davidson looked Marcus up and down like he was examining a suspicious package. "We didn't request additional security. What company sent you?"
Marcus pulled a folded paper from his pocket, one he'd prepared that morning with a fake work order. "Security plus services. Says here you needed coverage for the morning shift."
"That's impossible." Davidson snatched the paper from Marcus's hand, his movements sharp with irritation. "I handle all security arrangements personally. There must be some mistake."
Around them, bank customers had begun to notice the commotion. An elderly white couple whispered to each other near the investment advisory desk, their eyes fixed on Marcus with undisguised suspicion. A young mother pulled her child closer, as if proximity to him posed some unnamed threat.
"Sir, I'm just doing my job," Marcus said quietly, maintaining the calm demeanor he'd perfected in countless business negotiations. "Maybe there was a miscommunication."
Davidson's face reddened. "The only miscommunication is you thinking you can walk into my bank without authorization. Jessica, call the police."
The words hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun. Conversation stopped, heads turned. The casual discrimination Marcus had heard about was playing out in real time, and he was the target.
"That seems excessive," Marcus said, his voice still steady despite the rage building in his chest. "I can simply leave if there's been an error."
"Oh, you'll leave all right," Davidson sneered, "but not before we make sure you haven't stolen anything. Empty your pockets."
The command sent a ripple of shocked murmurs through the gathering crowd. Some customers looked uncomfortable, shifting their weight and avoiding eye contact. Others leaned in closer, clearly enjoying the spectacle.
Marcus felt the familiar weight of his wallet in his back pocket. The wallet containing his real ID, his Black American Express card, and the business cards that identified him as CEO of Thompson Industries. For a moment, he considered revealing his true identity and watching Davidson's world crumble, but he needed to see how far this would go.
"I haven't taken anything," Marcus said, pulling out his phone and the fake work order. "These are all I have."
Davidson grabbed the phone, scrolling through it like he expected to find evidence of some crime.
This could be stolen. How do I know this belongs to you?
Because it's password protected and has my fingerprint, Marcus replied, fighting to keep his voice level.
Fingerprints can be faked, Davidson shot back, though his argument was growing thinner by the second.
A well-dressed black woman in her 40s approached the scene, her briefcase and professional attire marking her as someone with business to conduct. She stopped when she saw what was happening, her expression shifting from confusion to recognition of something all too familiar.
"Excuse me," she said to Davidson, her voice crisp with authority.
"I'm Dr. Angela Hayes. I have an appointment to discuss a business loan, but I can see you're occupied." Davidson barely glanced at her. "Take a seat, ma'am. We'll be with you when we're done handling this situation." Dr. Hayes' eyes narrowed. "This situation? You mean questioning a man for the crime of existing while black in your bank?" "Ma'am, please don't interfere," Davidson warned, his tone growing more agitated. "This man entered our bank under false pretenses. We have every right to detain him until police arrive." "False pretenses?" Dr. Hayes stepped closer, her voice rising. "I've been watching for 10 minutes. He showed you a work order, answered your questions politely, and offered to leave. What more do you want?"
Other customers began murmuring, some nodding in agreement with Dr. Hayes, others shaking their heads in disapproval at her intervention. The tension in the room thickened like humidity before a storm.
Jessica hung up the phone. "Police are on their way," she announced with satisfaction. Marcus felt his jaw clench. In 15 minutes, squad cars would arrive, and officers would find themselves in the surreal position of potentially arresting the bank's actual owner. The irony would be laughable if it weren't so tragic. "This is exactly what I expected," Dr. Hayes said, her voice carrying the weight of decades of experience with such treatment. "A black man walks into your bank and immediately becomes a suspect. A black woman tries to open a business account and gets treated like she's asking for charity." Davidson whirled on her. "Ma'am, if you don't stop disrupting our business, I'll have you removed as well." The threat landed like a slap across the lobby. Several customers gasped. An older black gentleman who'd been waiting in line stepped forward.
"Young man," he said to Davidson, his voice carrying the authority of age and hard-earned wisdom. "I've been banking here for 30 years. I've seen a lot of changes, but this—"
"Mr. Washington, please," Davidson said, his tone shifting to placating when addressing the longtime customer. "This is a security matter. We have protocols."
"Protocols?" Mr. Washington's laugh was bitter. "I remember when your protocols included separate entrances for folks like me. Seems some things haven't changed as much as I hoped." The comparison to the Jim Crow era sent visible shockwaves through the crowd. Younger customers looked confused, while older ones nodded grimly in recognition. Davidson's face turned an even deeper shade of red. "That's completely different," Davidson sputtered. "This has nothing to do with race. This man entered our bank fraudulently."
With a work order, Dr. Hayes pointed out, which he showed you immediately when asked.
"Anyone can forge a work order," Davidson replied, desperation creeping into his voice as he realized he was losing control of the narrative. Marcus watched the scene unfold with a mixture of fascination and disgust. This was exactly the kind of systematic discrimination his grandmother had faced, dressed up in corporate language and pseudo-legal justifications. The more Davidson talked, the deeper he dug his own grave. The sound of sirens grew louder outside, and through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Marcus could see 2 police cars pulling up to the curb. Officers emerged, their hands resting casually on their belts as they approached the entrance. Finally, Davidson muttered, straightening his tie like he was preparing for a performance. The officers entered the bank, with the measured pace of men accustomed to being called to resolve disputes they didn't fully understand. The older officer, a graying man with tired eyes, surveyed the scene while his younger partner remained near the door.
"What seems to be the problem here?" the senior officer asked.
Davidson stepped forward eagerly. "Officers, this man gained unauthorized entry to our bank claiming to be security. When we questioned him, he became belligerent and refused to leave."
Marcus almost laughed at the blatant lie. He hadn't raised his voice once or shown any sign of aggression, but he remained silent, curious to see how the officers would handle the situation.
The younger officer approached Marcus. "Sir, can I see some identification?"
This was the moment Marcus had been waiting for. He could continue the charade, show them the fake ID he'd prepared, and let the situation escalate further. Or he could end it now, reveal who he really was, and watch Davidson's world collapse in real time. But before he could respond, Dr. Hayes spoke up again.
"Officer, I've been here the entire time.
This man has been nothing but polite and cooperative. The bank manager is the one who's been aggressive and threatening.
Ma'am, we'll need you to step back, the younger officer said.
Step back. Dr. Hayes' voice rose. I'm a customer here, conducting legitimate business. I have every right to witness what's happening.
Mr. Washington moved to stand beside her. She's right, officers. I've seen the whole thing too. This young man hasn't done anything wrong except have the wrong skin color in the wrong place.
The senior officer held up his hand. Let's all calm down. Sir, he addressed Marcus directly. Do you have identification?
Marcus reached slowly into his back pocket, aware that any sudden movement might escalate the situation dangerously. His fingers closed around his wallet, the leather warm from body heat. Inside was his real driver's license, his business cards, and credit cards that would instantly identify him as one of the wealthiest men in the state.
But as he prepared to pull out the wallet, the bank's front doors opened again, and a woman in an expensive tailored suit walked in. She moved with the confident stride of someone accustomed to command, her heels clicking authoritatively against the marble floor.
"What's going on here?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife.
Davidson's face went pale. "Miss Blackwood, we have a security situation." Victoria Blackwood was the bank's head of operations, a woman Davidson reported to and clearly feared. Her reputation for ruthless efficiency was legendary throughout the banking industry. She'd been Marcus's primary contact during the acquisition negotiations, though she didn't know his identity beyond the corporate representatives who'd handled the paperwork.
Security situation. She surveyed the scene, police officers, agitated customers, a black man in a security uniform standing calmly in the center of it all. Explain.
Davidson stammered through his version of events, making Marcus sound like a potential terrorist who'd somehow infiltrated the bank with nefarious intent. With each word, Blackwood's expression grew more skeptical.
"Let me understand," she said when Davidson finished. "A man in a security uniform showed you a work order, answered your questions politely, and offered to leave when you said there was a mistake, and your response was to call the police and accuse him of theft?"
"Well, when you put it like that," Davidson began.
"I'm putting it exactly like that because that's what happened." Blackwood snapped. She turned to the officers. "Gentlemen, I apologize for wasting your time. This appears to be a misunderstanding that should have been handled internally." The senior officer looked relieved.
Are you sure, ma'am? We can still check his ID if you'd like.
Marcus finally spoke up. "Actually, I think that would be a good idea."
All eyes turned to him as he slowly pulled out his wallet. The leather was expensive, clearly custom-made, and definitely not the kind of thing a minimum-wage security guard would carry. Davidson noticed it too, his eyes narrowing with suspicion.
"Where did you get that wallet?" Davidson demanded. "That's a $1,000 piece."
"Maybe I saved up for it," Marcus replied calmly, opening it to reveal the contents.
He pulled out his driver's license first, holding it so only the officers could see it initially. The younger officer's eyes widened as he read the name, then looked up at Marcus with new recognition.
"Sir," the officer said carefully, "could you step over here for a moment?"
Marcus followed him a few feet away from the crowd. The officer showed his partner the ID, and both men's expressions changed dramatically.
Mr. Thompson, the senior officer said quietly, "What exactly is going on here?"
"An experiment," Marcus replied, his voice low enough that only the officers could hear. "I recently acquired this bank, and I wanted to see how my employees treat black customers. I'd say the results speak for themselves." The officers exchanged glances. They were clearly caught between their duty to investigate and their recognition that they were dealing with someone far more powerful than they'd initially realized.
"Sir," the younger officer said, "would you like us to handle this situation, or would you prefer to deal with it internally?"
Marcus looked back at Davidson, who was growing increasingly agitated as he tried to overhear the conversation. Dr. Hayes and Mr. Washington remained near the teller windows, both watching the proceedings with intense interest. Other customers had begun taking out their phones, recording what they clearly sensed was about to become a very dramatic moment.
"Let me handle it," Marcus said. He walked back to the group, the officers following at a respectful distance.
Blackwood stepped forward. "Sir, I want to apologize for this entire situation. There's clearly been a miscommunication, and our response was inappropriate." "What's inappropriate?" Marcus said, his voice carrying a new authority that made everyone in the lobby listen more carefully. "Is the way your manager assumed a black man in a security uniform must be a criminal." Davidson's face flushed. "Now wait just a minute. I never said anything about race." "You didn't have to," Dr. Hayes interjected. "Your actions spoke louder than words." Marcus held up his driver's license so everyone could see it.
My name is Marcus Thompson. I'm the CEO of Thompson Industries.
A murmur rippled through the crowd. Several people clearly recognized the name, their expression shifting from curiosity to shock.
6 months ago, Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger. My company purchased this bank. I came here today, dressed as security, to see how my employees treat black customers. The experiment exceeded my worst expectations.
Davidson's mouth fell open. The color drained from his face like water from a broken dam. That's impossible. The new owner is...
Standing right in front of you, Marcus finished. He pulled out his business card and handed it to Blackwood, who studied it with growing amazement.
Sir, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I had no idea. The acquisition paperwork listed Thompson Industries, but I never connected.
Never connected that a black man might own $1 billion company? Marcus asked. That's exactly the problem.
The lobby had fallen completely silent except for the soft clicking of phone cameras recording every moment. Davidson looked like he might faint.
Mr. Thompson, Davidson stammered. I apologize. I had no idea who you were. That's the point, Marcus said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. You didn't know who I was, so you automatically assumed I was a threat. You called the police on your own boss because I had the audacity to be black in your bank. Dr. Hayes stepped forward. Mr. Thompson, I'm Dr. Angela Hayes. I was here to discuss a business loan, but after witnessing this display, I'm not sure I want to do business with this institution. Marcus turned to her with genuine interest. What kind of business, Dr. Hayes?
I'm opening a medical practice specializing in pediatric care in underserved communities. I need a loan to purchase equipment and secure a location.
And how has your experience been with loan applications here?
Dr. Hayes' smile was bitter. 3 rejections in 6 months, despite having excellent credit and a detailed business plan. Funny how the criteria keep changing.
Marcus nodded grimly. He turned to Mr. Washington.
Sir, you mentioned you've been a customer here for 30 years.
That's right, son. Since 1993. Watch this neighborhood change. Watch the bank change. Not always for the better.
What kind of changes?
Mr. Washington glanced at Davidson, who looked ready to bolt for the nearest exit. Well, seemed like every year it got a little harder for folks who look like us to get fair treatment. Loans took longer to process, fees started appearing that weren't there before. Little things that add up.
Marcus felt his anger crystallizing into cold determination. This wasn't just about Davidson's behavior today. This was about systematic discrimination that had been going on under his ownership, even if unknowingly.
Miss Blackwood, he said, turning to the operations manager. I want a full audit of our loan approval processes for the past 5 years. I want to see every application, every rejection, and every approval, sorted by applicant demographics.
Sir, that will take weeks to compile.
Then you'd better start today. His voice brooked no argument. I also want to see our hiring practices, our customer service protocols, and our security procedures.
Blackwood nodded frantically, pulling out her phone to start making calls.
Marcus turned back to Davidson, who had been edging slowly toward the exit during the conversation. Mr. Davidson, where do you think you're going?
I was just...
You were just what? Planning to slip away and pretend this never happened?
Davidson's shoulders slumped in defeat. Mr. Thompson, please. I made a mistake. I can do better. A mistake? Marcus's voice rose for the first time since entering the bank. You racially profiled your own boss, called the police on a paying customer, and created a hostile environment for every black person who walks through these doors. That's not a mistake, Mr. Davidson. That's a pattern.
The crowd had grown larger as word spread through the bank. Tellers had abandoned their windows, loan officers had emerged from their offices, and even customers who'd been in private meetings were now gathering to witness the confrontation.
Sir, Davidson pleaded. I have a family. I need this job. Dr. Hayes needs capital for her medical practice, Marcus replied coldly. Mr. Washington needs to be treated with dignity after 30 years of loyalty. Our community needs a bank that serves everyone equally. What you need, Mr. Davidson, is to find a new career.
You can't fire me for this. Marcus pulled out his phone and called his legal team. The conversation was brief, but decisive.
Actually, I can, he said after hanging up. Discrimination based on race is not only morally reprehensible, it's illegal. Security will escort you out in 5 minutes. HR will mail your final check.
As if summoned by his words, 2 actual security guards appeared from the back offices. Unlike Marcus's borrowed uniform, theirs were crisp and professional. They flanked Davidson, who looked around desperately for support that wasn't coming.
"This isn't over," Davidson said, as he was led away. "I'll sue for wrongful termination."
"Please do," Marcus replied. "I look forward to showing a jury the video footage from today."
As Davidson disappeared through the employee's entrance, the lobby erupted in a mix of applause and shocked conversation. Several customers approached Marcus directly, some to congratulate him, others to share their own experiences with discrimination at the bank.
But Marcus wasn't done.
"Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying easily across the marble-walled space, "I apologize for the disruption to your banking today, but I hope you've witnessed something important."
The conversations quieted as people turned to listen. This bank was purchased 6 months ago by Thompson Industries with a specific mission, to serve this community fairly and equally. What you've seen today proves we have work to do.
He gestured to Dr. Hayes. "Dr. Hayes, consider your loan approved. I'd like you to meet with our senior lending officer this afternoon to discuss terms."
Dr. Hayes' eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Thompson, I don't know what to say."
"Say you'll give us a chance to do better."
He turned to Mr. Washington. "Sir, I'd like to offer you a position on our community advisory board. We need voices like yours to guide our policies."
The older man straightened his shoulders, decades of dignity shining in his eyes. "Son, it would be my honor."
Marcus addressed the crowd again. "To everyone here today who has experienced discrimination at this or any other financial institution, I want you to know that things are changing. We will do better because we must do better."
He pulled out a business card and handed it to one of the customers who'd been recording. "Please share this story. Share the video. Let people know that accountability exists, even in places where you might not expect it." The woman took the card with shaking hands. "Mr. Thompson, this is going to go viral."
"Good," Marcus said. "Maybe it will inspire other business owners to take a hard look at their own companies."
As the crowd began to disperse, Blackwood approached him with a tablet full of preliminary data.
"Sir, I've started the audit you requested. The initial numbers are concerning."
Marcus looked at the screen, seeing patterns of rejection rates that painted a clear picture of discriminatory practices. His jaw tightened.
"How long has this been going on?"
"From what I can see, at least 3 years, possibly longer."
"Then we have 3 years of wrongs to make right." He handed the tablet back to her. "I want a plan on my desk by Friday. Full remediation for every customer who was unfairly denied. Policy changes to prevent future discrimination. And a complete overhaul of our hiring and training processes."
"Yes, sir."
"And Mr. Thompson?"
"What is it?"
"For what it's worth, what you did today, it took courage." Marcus looked around the lobby, where normal banking operations were slowly resuming. But something fundamental had changed. The casual assumptions that had allowed Davidson's behavior to flourish had been shattered, replaced by an awareness that actions have consequences.
"It shouldn't take courage to be black in America," he said quietly. "But until that changes, those of us with power have a responsibility to use it wisely."
As Marcus finally left the bank that afternoon, he passed the spot where Davidson had first confronted him. The security uniform felt different now, not like a disguise, but like a reminder of how quickly circumstances could change a person's entire world. His phone buzzed with notifications. The video was already online, shared thousands of times across social media platforms. Comments poured in from around the world, some supportive, others angry, all of them proof that the conversation about equality in America was far from over.
But Marcus smiled as he read Dr. Hayes' text. "Loan approved. Practice opens next month. Thank you for giving me hope."
Sometimes the most powerful victories were the smallest ones. A qualified doctor getting the loan she deserved, an elderly man being treated with respect, a bank learning that discrimination had real consequences.
Marcus Thompson drove home that evening knowing he'd done more than just fire a racist manager. He'd sent a message that reverberated far beyond the marble walls of one bank. Change was not only possible, it was inevitable for those brave enough to demand it.
The experiment was over. The real work was just beginning.